this. I dare not speculate on what has them so excited.
Have you a name?
The man chuckles dryly.
Barely.
I don't really know what I am to take from that.
This time his laugh is more of a bark, quickly out and swallowed back up. Then he frowns.
Lou. Only 2 letters. So barely.
Barely a name. Okay, I get it now.
I see. What are you doing out here without the guide?
Perhaps the question isn't appropriate to ask. After all, only the darkest of circumstances spurs someone to cross Sinnlos. But this situation is very strange. I might even go so far as to say it's suspicious, right? Yeah, exactly. I'm feeling very suspicious about him too. I know that's not fair, but I can't help it. Years spent anticipating danger have made me wary.
That's a good question. I'm not sure I know myself.
What does that mean? Is that some sort of joke too? Or do you genuinely not remember how you arrived where you are?
No, it wasn't a joke. Or, well, there is a point to it all.
Then his voice, already by nature light and airy, drops to a whisper.
But I don't know why I even tried. You'd think that I'd be able to call a spade already, right?
He looks up, noticing my gaze still leveled at him. Then he shrugs.
I'd rather not talk about it.
Again, probably some kind of trauma. As what has become the norm, I don't fully understand what he means, but I can at least guess that he's not very happy with himself at present. And like it or not, he won't be sharing his real reasons with me.
What about you? What brings you out on this little adventure?
People. On the other side. People who need my help.
You have someone waiting on you? Then why are you risking yourself on me instead of worrying about what's going to happen to them?
I feel my brows furrow from my speck of alarm. Is that really what he took from this? I survey his face with a flick of my eyes, but there is no mischievous gleam to his look now. He's serious. We hold eye contact for a moment until he yet again stares down at the ground.
Sorry. I didn't mean to be disrespectful. It just fell out somehow. I wasn't thinking.
Well, I mean, if she... I don't know... if she's going to save other people, I mean, he as a person has to be important as well, right? His stare shoots back up at mine, eyes wide.
Of course I'm going to be there for those counting on me. But you aren't nothing. I won't simply turn my back on you.
He smiles sadly. The kind of smile only someone who has experienced great hardship has. A smile I'm all too familiar with. Maybe the group he was in, he was like poorly treated, but it was all he had. And now that they're gone, he's conflicted, maybe? Maybe he's never felt love in his life?
I'd probably have to disagree. Still, that's nice of you to say.
Maybe he was a slave or something.
We may not know each other well, but you wanted us to go on without you for our own safety. You even tried to have a sense of humor about it. That counts for something.
That's true. It does. Like, he at least cared enough about them to say, go ahead, I'll be fine. My statement is far from grand, yet he becomes distinctly bashful all of a sudden, twitching his legs with each step. He hangs his head and mumbles his next phrase. Sadly, he seems unaccustomed to receiving praise.
That's true. Thank you for staying back with me. It's kind of nice.
No need to thank me.
Oh, right. I can't even show gratitude correctly. Of course.
It's a turn of phrase, bro. I go to give him a look, but he's smiling. He looks less pitiful than usual. He almost seems content. While crossing Sinnlos? How? Why?
It is not funny to make a joke out of thinking that way about yourself.
If you don't want people to say things like that, then you shouldn't reject their thanks. Either I did right by thanking you, or I did wrong.
Yeah. he's got a point there, Kikka. Yeah, he's got a point.
Fine. You're welcome.
This time, he lets out a real laugh, though a short one.
I'm glad.
He stretches his arms out in front of him and elongates his stride so he's walking a bit ahead of me. It sits wrong with me. He's relaxed and completely unguarded. He's even fine with distancing himself from the light and all the odd comments he has said so far. Then a thought strikes me. Maybe the reason he's so calm is that he doesn't care what happens to him. My heart plummets into my gut. For a time, there is relative peace in the silence between us. Then Lou sighs heavily.
I never could have seen myself in a situation like this. It seems things really aren't over until they're over.
Did you think it was over?
Yeah, I'm sure he did. He doesn't answer immediately. When he does, the reply is accompanied by him grasping himself, like he might fall apart if he lets go.
Yeah, I did.
That would have been the normal outcome of this situation. Alone, lightless. I shouldn't have asked. I must have let a frown slip through, because Lou smiles a non-smile. He stretches his hand behind his neck and gives a little chuckle.
Something really is wrong with me. Somehow, I feel lighter.
I think it's because he finally found someone who gave him some praise, who, is actually honest about being respectful toward him. And I think that's making him feel happy to the point where he's not thinking straight. Alright, well, maybe this is good. If he's feeling better than he was, then perhaps his view of himself will improve.
I wonder who'll still be left standing when this is truly all over.
What?
Everyone will be.
I say it firmly to end the discussion, but Lou's expressions grow grave and unusually sympathetic. He knows somebody's gonna die. He knows it.
You know that's not possible, don't you? Someone will go. You should focus on making sure it's someone else.
You don't seem to be concerned with self-preservation.
That came out more hostile than I had expected. He doesn't mind it.
True, but it's not the same for me.
Why? What's so different about you? I still don't know how I'm supposed to interact with a person like him. Making conversation is already not a strength I possess. Regardless, Lou echoing that sentiment was not something I had expected. The whispers from the lake, which had already grown, now speak faster and clearer. The individual words are almost inaudible. I'd likely be able to make them out if I knew the Nix language. For a split second, I wish I did. The light in the distance still drifts along in the same manner as it did when we first started walking, which I take to mean the path hasn't turned so far. Hopefully that means we're still on the right path. But the light, it got brighter? It's strong enough that I have to glance away for a second, and the next time I look, the light has grown. The bridge is on fire. I grab Lou's arm without thinking. He's standing there stiff, staring at the glow, eyes dull.
We're going to run.
To hell with the guide's orders. If we don't go now, we will never go anywhere again. Lou doesn't respond. I give his arm a small tug and he appears to come to himself when he nods at me. I make the decision, then, that I won't let go of his arm. I don't know what'll happen to him if I do. We take off, the heat growing with each step. The dankness of the bridge means the fire is spreading slowly, but it makes me question how it began in the first place. There is no end to how wrong this place is. It takes 20 paces before the air around us ripples, then starts folding into itself. Thick smoke pours over us, stinging like scorpions in my eyes. I cover my mouth with my free arm to keep breathing, and soon we're at the fire itself. The bridge lurches beneath us, as if the beams supporting it are starting to give way at the thousands of flying sparks. Lou stumbles and pulls himself against me for support, but we keep our ground. I start pulling him through the blaze. We don't have time to gather our bearings. Who knows how long we have until the bridge collapses or is devoured by flames. As we push through the smoke, Lou wheezing for breath beside me. Figures emerge. Bemelle and Margaret. What's going on? I look at the two, and the situation around them, baffled. None of the individual pieces make any sense, until the reality of it hits me all at once. The guide is gone. Oh, dude! Gone? Margaret paused at the bridge. Her lantern is at her side. It's her glasses she's missing. Bemelle is off to the other side, lanternless, with only the flickering embers in the wind to keep him out of the darkness. I want to pretend that they're both fine, that they'll be capable of handling themselves, but I know that's just wishful thinking. Both of them are in danger. I don't know how the Nixi feel about fire, how daring they'll be with it so close by, but I can't assume this is an opportunity they would want to miss. I have to do something, and I have to do it now. Oh, dude! We gotta grab Margaret, because she's the civilian, right? She's a civilian. We gotta leave Bemelle to himself. I mean, he's a soldier. He should... I don't know, guys. Without wasting another second, I run to Margaret's side, Lou in tow. I'm the one who put her in danger, and she needs me. I have to be there for her.
Margaret!
Margaret's head shoots up, eyes squinting through the smoke. Tears like ribbons gleam down her face, whether they're because of smoke or panic, I don't know. I'm nearly at her side when a shout goes up from the other end of the bridge. A chunk of the bridge near Bemelle has vanished, collapsed into the water, and in its place are Nixi, trying to claw their way up. Bemelle is backing away from them, but that's only pushing him closer to the edge. Oh no! I check on Margaret again. She's on her feet and heading over to me, but she's standing now, and she has her lantern to keep those monsters at bay. I leave her, wanting to get my light to Bemelle. Bemelle stopped in the perfect center of the bridge, unable now to move forward or back. Instead, he turns to me, face pained in a way I've never seen him. All he can do is wait for me to come and hope it's soon enough. But as I approach, so does a Nix. A Nix larger than I knew they could be. It pulls itself halfway out of the water, reaching for Bemelle, and it grabs him. It latches its arm around his torso. Bemelle lets out an agonized scream, the Nix's claws anchoring into his flesh, and the creature lets itself fall into the lake, using its body weight to take Bemelle with him. I run faster, reaching my arm, my lantern, out to him. Bemelle doesn't reach back. He just looks at me.
Don't!
He falls backward into the lake. The Nix's weight too much for him to resist. After a moment, the water stills. There's no sign of him. I stop, panting, still feet away where Bemelle fell. Tears burn my eyes.
No, he can't be gone.
Something tugs on my arm. I panic, but it's Margaret. I gape at her. I can barely keep myself together.
What happened to the guide? Is he also?
My voice cracks in spite of myself. I don't know that I want to hear the answer, but it has to be said.
No, I don't think so. I couldn't see through the smoke and without my glasses, but I didn't hear anything.
How did this happen?
While we were running through the fire, the bridge shook. It knocked my glasses off. I bent down to pick them up. There were footsteps. Someone kept going, and then Bemelle asked if I was all right.
The tears return to her, and she wipes her nose on her sleeve.
He said he'd stay to keep watch while I couldn't see.
That sounds like Bemelle.
I'm so sorry.
I don't say anything in response. I can't. The bridge trembles again, and I gather my wits just enough to get through this.
We need to leave. Which way did the guide go?
It sounded like he just went forward, and then I couldn't hear him anymore.
That will work. Lou?
I look around for him, realizing he's not with me any longer. At some point, I let go of his arm. He's standing to the side, gaze glazed, transfixed on the darkness. He seems completely unaware of everything that's happened. The fire, the Nixi, the death. I step forward and yank him back to my side.
What are you doing?
He flinches at the unexpected contact and looks attentively at me, but he doesn't offer an explanation.
I'm sorry.
That is all he ever says. I let go of him.
Both of you stay close. We are not going to separate again.
We keep down the path, the flames still gradually gnawing on the planks behind us. The guide doesn't turn up, nor do any signs of him, but we push on. We will not stop moving. Then we do. The bridge comes to a dead end of rotted out boards collapsed into the lake. For a moment, our breathing stops at once. If this was the way that led to the island, then... I flip back to face the others, my expression unaffected. I'm not going to allow panic to sap this group of judgment.
Let's look for another bridge.
I resolutely begin retracing our path. The others follow without protest. Our regression is silent except for our footfalls and the snapping of soggy wood attempting to burn. We frequently have to step over smoldering sections trying to come alight. At one point, we even have to walk one at a time, sideways, to avoid a wildly flickering small fire billowing out black smoke. Just as my spirit is beginning to dim, we come across different directions to take. Among all the forks, there are only two that aren't collapsed or too consumed by fire to risk following.
We're lost.
Her voice is scarcely more than a whisper. I barely make it out over the sounds of crackling flames and splintering wood. Lou's gaze is flickering down either path. There's a palpable sense of anxiety coming from him.
I don't know. I don't know which way.
It's alright.
But it's not alright. We have to have something to go off of, anything at all. A cold sweat trickles its way down my back. Before anyone tries to randomly choose, a noise catches my attention. I hastily address the two.
Did you hear that?
It sounded like a whistle.
It came from the right.
Lou and I trade looks. This could be the signal we need. But what if it isn't?
Do those monsters know how to whistle?
I would assume not, but...
We should go right, I think, to where the sound came from.
I'm a little surprised Lou is offering his own opinion. It is good to hear, however. I take a deep breath.
I agree. There's more of a chance the whistle was a sign for good over ill.
Our course decided, we move on. We move as one down the right path, no longer hesitating. As we follow the bridge down, there is no sign of the end. There's no need to debate between directions again. We start to outpace the fire, one danger thankfully fading away, but the night continues to lighten, regardless. I glance at the sky and realize what's happening. The sun is rising. The bridges will sink into the water as the darkness disappears and takes us with them. We'll be lost. It suddenly seems pointless. We don't even know whether we're going the right way, and we still haven't caught up to the guide. We can't outswim the Nixi, and we can't outrun the dawn. We're going to run out of time. Yet, we keep moving forward. And finally, our perseverance is rewarded. This silhouette of an island rises in the distance. The island grows rapidly larger, and soon the scents of earth and trees reach us. In spite of all the horrors of this night, a dock emerges from the fog before us, welcoming us to safety. We reach the shore. I don't believe it until I've stepped off the wood and my boot sinks into the sand. I walk further inland like a corpse, my sole instinct to flee from the waterline. My hazy eyes single in on something ahead. The guide stands on an outcropping in the distance, watching like a sentinel. He doesn't even come to greet us. I stare at him for a moment, not even able to feel alarmed at my own lack of feelings about the situation. He uses his staff to gesture at the forest behind him before disappearing between the trees. I can only assume he must be asking me to follow. The guide takes us further inland, more towards the center. There's a view of the coastline from there, where we're also partially obscured by a few trees.
It's time to sleep.
No one has the energy to argue with him at this point. I find a place as comfortable as one could ask for in a location like this, next to one of the trees further out and laying down, trying to block out my thoughts. For once, exhaustion is my ally, and I slip off into sleep. My eyes slowly blink open and readjust to the brightness, what little there is. The sun is obscured by a thick layer of fog, making it impossible to estimate the time of day. I prop up my elbows and push myself up. The ground is hard and rocky, but that isn't the only reason I am eager to get on my feet. I check my surroundings. The harsh, craggy earth of the island is interlaced with twisting vines and gnarled branches. Beside me, Margaret and Lou are still fast asleep. The guide, however, is nowhere to be seen. I realize that I don't recall seeing him lay down with everyone. It's likely he left us hours ago. There's a creeping silence here. I can't help but shudder at the hollow, aching feeling inside of me. It refuses to relent. I shift my weight back and forth, unsure of what to do with myself. Memory of last night's harrowing journey flicker through my mind. I notice the others begin to stir. Margaret accidentally knocks Lou as she gets up, awakening him as well. My mouth opens, then shuts, and after a moment of fumbling, a word finally escapes.
Hello.
Hello to you.
Margaret greets me as she rubs her eyes. It seems to be due to trouble adjusting to not having her glasses rather than grogginess. Behind her, Lou remains on the ground.
We should eat something soon. I don't trust what is on this island, so I'll have to split my supplies with Lou.
I admit, for a trip of this length, I could only manage to carry the minimum, so I don't have much to share. However, you shouldn't be the only one who gives something up.
Oh, that is nice of her.
Don't worry about me. I'm fine. I'm not hungry.
Lou's back is turned against us. He still hasn't gotten up out of the dirt.
You won't make it very far if you don't have something to eat.
Lou buries his head deeper into his knees as he curls into a tighter ball.
No thanks.
I wonder when the last time he ate even was. Considering where we found him, he could have been out over Sinnlos for more than a day. Yet, he has nothing with him.
That's a good point. I mean, how long has it been? What did they just run out of supplies? Did they run out of supplies days ago for him?
I'm concerned about that as well. But I know it can be difficult to force yourself to eat after something traumatic, and I'm afraid I'm not very skilled at encouraging others.
There's a stinging sensation inside of me. That was not something I ever needed to do because he was there. Margaret and I both frown. A distinct rustling of the leaves around catches my attention. The guide appears, emerging from the thicket. Margaret seems to be a little uncomfortable at his return. Lou doesn't notice. The guide nears us and begins to speak.
The Nixi will not tread on land in daylight. However, being near the shoreline is still dangerous. If you leave the center of the island, remain cautious.
That makes sense.
Before the sun sets, I will be in this area. It would be wise to meet me here before nightfall.
And just what needs to be done over in those woods that cannot be done in the brush here with the rest of us?
Despite Margaret's pointed question, the guide considers his piece here finished. He turns around and returns to the forest area from which he came. Beside me, Margaret releases a sigh.
Are you all right?
No, I'm not. Nothing is all right. It will never get any better.
Margaret sucks in a breath as she starts to get emotional. Before it can spill out of her, she turns on her heels and walks off in a direction different than the guide's. I don't try to stop her. Lou meekly calls out to me. I turn around to face him, though I don't speak. He's standing some distance away. He fidgets and glances over to the side before returning his gaze to my eyes. He gestures for me to come closer. I comply. He begins to whisper at me, but he fumbles with his words and I can't make out anything he says. I look at him inquisitively. Finally, he speaks up enough to be clear.
I'm sorry for what happened last night.
He speaks quickly as he looks up at me, eyes filled with sorrow. He shifts his focus downwards.
You would have been better off without me.
It's not your fault.
My words come out hollow and empty. I mean what I say. but cannot find the energy to make it seem convincing.
It was closer to being my fault than anyone else's. I wasn't supposed to be here, and all I did was get in the way. The guide was right about me. I knew from the beginning that it would be like this too.
So, what is your deal then, bro?
I never should have stayed.
Finishing his thought, he sniffles as he turns away. Suddenly, I feel a strong surge of emotions rip through me. Everything is falling apart and I do not have the power to change this. Quietly, I speak. I think she needs to be alone. Lou continues walking away from me, but I do catch him flinch at the statement. I assume that he heard me, though he decided it was best not to acknowledge it. I look at the ground until I no longer hear his footsteps. It seems as though my wish to be alone will be granted. There's no sign that they will be returning. A cold chill somehow whips its way down my back, despite the calm of the air. I keep my gaze on the dark ground, taking a breath so deep it stings the back of my throat. As I steadily empty my lungs, I try to empty my mind of all thoughts. I do not know what I'm doing anymore. Nothing is straightforward. I find something familiar and powerful in my thoughts and latch on. The mission. I have to try and focus on the mission. I need to be strong. My eyes dart back up. Is someone watching? I wonder if I'm afraid of being seen struggling like this, or if I hope I may not be on my own here. It doesn't matter. There is nothing but the silent island. Time seems so indefinite around me, passing slowly. On this island, it almost seems to move slow as a stagnant pond. I shake my head, burying the thought. It's irrational, but I cannot bear to think of even old pond water. Gradually, my consciousness begins to include the world again. I do a few standard warm-up stretches, testing my mind and body. I don't know how long it's been, but I feel I have regained enough of my wits to continue on. I need to make sure everything is alright. I head through the wooded part of the island. There isn't anything that could be called a path, but I manage to pick my way through the bush quite well. Through a thinner stand of trees, I briefly catch sight of the guide standing on one of the beaches. He seems fine, but even though I'm sure he turned his head toward me, he makes no show of acknowledging me. I continue my check without heeding that. When I step into another clearing, I notice Margaret sitting quietly at the base of a tree. Margaret begrudgingly lifts her head as I approach, enabling me to see that her face is damp and tear-stained, while her eyes are red and puffy. She's been crying. I shift uncomfortably on my feet.
Has something happened?
Everything is fine. I came to check on you.
Well, that's nice.
She speaks somewhat curtly, but at least she no longer seems as depressed.
I'm happy to report that everything's in order on this front.
I'm glad.
Of course, I cannot fully believe that. Margaret isn't saying what's actually on her mind, but I have no way to truly reach her.
Is that everything?
I suppose it is.
My words come out slowly and hesitantly, as though she might change her mind if I bide my time. I want to do more, but I cannot think of what else I can do for her.
Then goodbye.
If you need anything, I will be close by.
Yes, thank you. I'm sure I'll see you soon.
Her response is sincere. It is enough to ease some of the worry. I smile, though weakly. With nothing else to say, I take my leave. I find that I've been pacing back and forth for quite some time. I finished my check a while ago, so I have nothing left to do but aimlessly wander. I'm overcome with restlessness. This island may be safer than the bridges, but that is far from enough to ease my mind. I quietly sigh and decide to wait on my own. If I go back now, whoever I encounter will know that I don't want to be alone. That is more troubling than simply staying where I am. I sit down and silently listen to the ambience of the island as I wait for time to pass. I can only hope that this will all end before I can no longer keep myself together. The sun begins to descend in the sky, and the light starts to fade into the fog. I feel relieved that it is almost time to leave this island. A chill slips down my spine at the thought of what comes next, however. It isn't too long before I hear someone approaching from within the brush. It's the guide. He emerges from the bushes and steps out into the open.
Hello.
He doesn't respond to my greeting. Instead, he narrows his eyes, causing the tension to rise that much further.
Lou is gone. He's dead.
What? After all the... what? Oh, man. I guess we were supposed to have gone after him. But, I mean, Kikka had just gone through a lot too. She needed time for herself to be able to get over it. I nearly fall backward from his words.
What?
Seconds tick by and the guide says nothing as my panic pounds higher, harder, and takes full control of my mind. That is not possible. No, this is a mistake.
We have to go look for him.
I would not claim this without good reason. Wait and you'll see. Night will fall and Lou will not come to meet us.
She is already aware of what has happened. My head feels as though it has been slammed against a brick wall. She knows. What did she feel when he told her? Has she been able to accept it as truth? I want to see her. I want to see another human with feelings alive and well. Most of all, though, I want this to be wrong. I cannot help but hope for Lou to come stumbling out of the bushes. He could make his usual belittling type of joke about himself by pointing out how readily the guide was willing to forget about him. I barely rein in my burning desire to search for Lou, or at least Margaret, but I know the dangers of blindly wandering off on my own. I cannot make the situation worse by acting irrationally, so I don't move. Before too long, Margaret appears. At first, I'm relieved to see a familiar face, until I notice she seems different somehow. She walks over resolutely, and there's an air of coldness to her. She's acting as she did when we first met. Dread pours into my stomach. The guide's words must not be a mistake. Lou must be dead, and Margaret is sure of that. I limply hang my head, trying to hide my increasingly watery eyes. I can't find any words to say. She doesn't speak either. All three of us wait in a deep, miserable silence until night falls. Night settles like a shroud over the land, every inch of the world now covered in unrelenting darkness. Suddenly, there is a gargling. The water parts as the bridges of Sinnlos rise, powered by some unnatural force, creaking like they might fall apart. I feel an inexplicable pounding like a hammer in the back of my head, beating faster and heavier than my own heart. I clench my teeth to stop it from churning my stomach.
We must go now.
The guide doesn't wait for any replies, briskly starting in the direction of the shore. Margaret and I match his pace. I can feel the air weighing on us, a sensation that slows our steps despite being rested. Something hovers in my mind, the mirrored memory of beginning the last night's journey. 1 day ago feels like a lifetime passed. The thick, inky water sloshes reluctantly off of the boards, bleeding back into the lake, until finally it becomes still. A shudder crawls over my body as I place my foot on the boards, but I quickly shake it off. I have no other option. We have to go through this again. All tense as day-old corpses, we walk over the bridges in silence. The only sound that accompanies us is the thick lapping of the water at the bridge. Margaret marches ahead of me so I can't view her face. However, even from the back, I feel that something's on her mind. I decide not to ask about it. It wasn't meant for me to hear. It feels as though barely any time has passed when it is explained that half the night has crept by. We encountered a few sunken bridges which forced us to reroute, while other paths were rotten enough to make us stagger our steps. However, the biggest threat of all is eerily absent: the prowlers. I haven't seen more than shadowy glimpses of them down the paths, and even those may have simply been tricks of the fog. I feel I may even be more on edge tonight than the last. Judging by Margaret's tenseness, she isn't set at ease by the lack of their presence either.
Why?
I whisper the question softly, almost silently as I scan left and right across the impossibly empty bridges for any sign of movement. I ponder whether they're still weary from the consuming blaze that lit up the night yesterday, or if they are less dragging themselves across the bridges than usual because many have already gotten what they wanted. My skin crawls with the touch of icy fingers at the thought, and I can't control the sharp shiver that travels down my spine. Margaret catches my concern as she slows her walking somewhat.
It's very quiet out here. I haven't heard anything but our footsteps since we started.
Yes.
She seems a tad disappointed by my brusque answer, but Margaret quickly refocuses and continues walking. As time passes by, we continue to see nothing but more bridges and fog. Beside me, Margaret eyes the guide sharply. She begins to question him.
How do you know where you're going?
Her tone is harsh and clipped. He doesn't answer her, prompting her to continue.
I heard that it's impossible to create a map of the bridges because they can change. I can understand that since I've seen them sink partway through the night myself. But I'm curious, how exactly are you able to tell that we're going the correct way?
That's a really good question. Like, if they change all the time and you can't make a map, how does he know? Unless he has some kind of connection. Maybe he works or like is in league with them for some reason. And like anytime anybody crosses with him, they die, or he leaves people to die. Like in order to feed them. Like, what if?
Because I remember.
Remember?
Remember what exactly?
She huffs to herself at the notion.
All these bridges look exactly the same.
But they aren't the same.
He replies immediately this time, addressing Margaret's line of questioning head-on despite having his back to us.
How many boards there are, the angle they curve at, the width. There are ways to tell them apart. It isn't the bridges alone either. There are signs in the water and even with the way the air feels.
Huh. As if he's some kind of spiritual thing, like knowing every single thing, like maybe he's like lived so long and gone these routes so often that he knows exactly.
As little as there is, everything here can be a marker, as long as one is actually committed to keeping it in mind.
But, like, it seems like it's so long, it takes a whole night to get through, though.
I see.
Despite wanting to dismiss the guide, she doesn't seem focused enough to be making mental notes on everything he's explained about the maze. She slowly falls into step with me, seemingly satisfied with the partial conversation she had been having with the guide.
It is still terribly difficult to navigate this dreadful place without my glasses.
You're going to be all right.
I firmly reassure her, however she merely scoffs again.
Perhaps not with a leader like him.
Her tone grows more annoyed.
I wonder how many people have needlessly died because he was the only person around to show them the way.
We need to focus. Like, let's keep focus here. Margaret merely sighs to herself in frustration and returns to being in front of me once more. I feel relieved to have evaded such a heavy topic. We're still on the bridges, so we need to keep our focus sharp if we're going to stay safe. Our progress continues steadily, and we still encounter no significant difficulties. Margaret has drifted further away from me and closer to the guide. He turns his head slightly to address her.
You're following too closely.
I expect her to step back and nothing to come from this. However, instead, Margaret dismissively snipes back.
I'm not at all within an arm's reach of you.
The guide abruptly stops walking, and Margaret accidentally ends up getting even closer to him.
You're close enough. Stay further behind.
He's far firmer in his demand this time around, highlighting how clearly the point was made. Margaret regards the guide defiantly and stands her ground. He narrows his eyes at the turn of events.
If you're not happy with how I lead, then continue on by yourself.
I start to feel concern creep in. The lack of trust between them has grown dangerously high, and with the way we're speaking, I fear that it could escalate further.
We should remain as a single group.
Margaret ignores me completely while remaining unfazed by the guide directly addressing the concern she had voiced.
It's rather hard to respect a leader who eavesdrops on conversations.
His jaw clenches as she tests his patience.
Either you are to lead yourself, or you will follow my path. Those are your choices. Say which one it will be.
Oh, so both options are to die then?
Wow. I mean, she's been through a lot, but man. That biting comment makes me wince. As I feared, this situation is spiraling further down, and any words to stop its descent cannot be found in my racing thoughts.
If you enter these bridges, all you should expect is death. That is no secret.
I think that was no secret from the beginning, yeah. The guide continues, annoyance leaking into his voice.
You think that the results would have been different if only I had said more or did something differently. But that is not true. The conclusion would be exactly the same. If Lou hadn't died when he did, he would have been lost at some other point during the trip.
So he's saying Lou would have died regardless, no matter what we did. So he's saying even if I, as Kikka, decided to stop him and try to reassure him, he would have died later on anyways.
That sounds like excuses to me.
Margaret raises her voice.
You're adept enough to traverse these bridges so often that you've memorized the minute details of them, but you couldn't help him? Why are you the only one who gets to avoid death here?
The guide's face twists into a vicious snarl. He shouts,
I have died!
He has died? Is he a ghost?
I have no life to give. Everything I am, everything I could have been, was surrendered to this lake. That is the only reason why I'm able to stand before you now.
What does he
I
mean?
can show you the way, and I can give you advice on how to survive the perils you will face. That is all I'm able to offer. Is that not enough for you? What else do you want from me? Kindness? Sympathy? It's been far too many years since I was capable of giving anything like that.
He finally stops to catch his breath, though the emotion in his eyes still shines intently. There is no response from either of us. An agonizing silence permeates the air. No one dares to even move. The tension is cut as the boards beneath me start to crack. My eyes dart down. The bridge is sinking. Rapidly. Instinctively, I jump backwards, but the new section of bridge groans horribly as it too starts to tilt into the water. They keep getting further and further away with each disappearing platform I move off of.
Wait!
I look up at Margaret's frantic call. My chest tightens when I see her and the guide on what has become the other side of a small chasm. I leap back just in time as the bridge under me snaps like a twig. Glancing over again, they keep getting further and further away with each disappearing platform I move off of. Dread creeps up my neck and I nearly lose my footing once I realize what's happening. Desperately stumbling backwards, I finally manage to regain my balance. I use this leap far enough back on that the bridge I land on doesn't immediately start to fall apart under my weight. In another 3 swift steps, I am finally on sturdy wood. The bridges reluctantly stop, shifting and settle. The only trace left of what was once a huge section of bridge is a few splintered boards floating in the murky water. The lake consumed it. Somehow, I am not surprised. Regaining my bearings, I face what has become of my circumstances. I am now separated from Margaret and the guide by a far wider gorge than anyone could leap. My throat goes bone dry as I teeter at the edge of the bridge, mind wildly scrambling for a solution that doesn't come. I lock onto Margaret's face. She's completely aghast, wringing her hands and opening her mouth wordlessly. She has little idea of what to do with herself. I'm not quite sure what to do with myself either. Margaret keeps her eyes on me, but I can faintly hear her address the guide. I'm too far off to grasp what Margaret is asking, but I get the impression she is seeing if there's another way. The guide turns to me. He's completely cooled down from the earlier interaction, back to his same placid expression. The guide says one word. Judging from the look of heartbreak on Margaret's face, I can only assume it was no. There's no way back to them. As I watch the two discuss my fate, unable to say anything, fear starts to crawl over me. My arms run cold to freezing. It's not long before the rest of my body follows. Tears drip down Margaret's face. I can see the delicate lantern light playing off them, even from here. The guide's voice echoes loudly across the water, separating me from them.
Go back and take the next bridge you come across that goes west. There may be enough time for you to find your own way.
I blink, taken aback for a moment, before I quickly regain my composure. That's right. This isn't over. I still have my lantern with me. The prowlers are less effective, and if the guide says that it's possible, it could be true. I nod solemnly at his words and yell back.
I'll meet you there. Don't wait for me.
He bows his head and starts to slowly back away from the edge. Margaret tries and fails to dry her eyes as she looks at me helplessly from across the waters. I smile forlornly at her as the wind whips against my back. I speak softly.
You need to go.
There's no way she could have heard me, yet I'm confident that the sentiment got across. I spin on my heels and run back the way we came, searching for the bridge the guide said to take. I can only hope that we all safely reunite before this night ends. I spare a brief glance behind me. However, there's not a trace of them or even the dead end I was stranded at. With a painful contracting of my heart, I realize that I am truly alone now. Quickly, I shake off the thought and refocus my attention on what's in front of me. The first branching of the path comes into reach. I skid to a full stop in front of it. The path west is as dark and desolate as every bridge. It's impossible to see what's down the twisting way. The previous conversation comes floating back to me. Now that I am here, I must face that concern. Is the guide reliable? Can he be trusted? I had to leave so they could go on without being weighed down. That I don't regret. However, I can't help but wonder if the guide couldn't give me a proper suggestion because of the sinking bridges. A mistake could have been made. It is also possible he knowingly gave false hope to keep the situation calm, or perhaps he intentionally set me to the wrong path because it would be easier for them if I did not make it. I look between the pathways. Based on my direction, it does seem as though other options could potentially connect me to them before the west does, yet I cannot possibly know until I move forward. I need to make a decision. We gotta follow him. I mean, we've got no other options, no other way to go. No, I cannot allow doubt to take control. We've known from the beginning that there is only one path that has led travelers to safety. His. I will take the guide on his word. Without wasting an additional moment, I make my way across the western bridge. I walk at a moderately brisk pace, not wanting to risk tripping or running out of energy in a moment where I need it. If the eeriness of the lake was disconcerting before, now it is overwhelming. The blizzard-like fog drifting over the waters limits my vision to the span of my arms. Ah, geez, looks like there are eyes out there. The utter silence was a comfort, despite how otherworldly it felt, but the whispering of the lake has started to stir now. I gulp despite myself. They've noticed me. As their chattering goes, I consider briefly if the others hear them as well, or if they have come out specifically because I am on my own. I straighten my back and walk more surely. I cannot let them believe I am an easy target. I even consider keeping my sword in hand, but it doesn't seem entirely likely they would realize it is something that could hurt them. To keep my mind from wandering into dark places, I count my steps like we used to in training. 1, 2, 3, 4. Despite my best efforts, things are starting to get to me. My worries wash over me, causing painful twinges underneath my clothes that can make me jerk and twitch like a fly-bitten horse. The whispering, inhuman voices, the feeling of vulnerability, the horrible thought of being hopelessly lost all melded together is consuming me. My pace breaks from the steady rhythm of my counting set. It quickens more as I start to succumb to fear. My brisk steps turn into a long, frantic strides. Something in me whispers, "Faster, go faster, don't let them catch you," and I listen. I break into a run. Like moving on landmines, flashes of fear explode in my mind and drive my feet harder, faster, stronger along the path. Until suddenly my sense of reason returns and I stop dead. My chest rises and falls with deep, heaving breaths as I try to calm myself down. The monsters erupt into an inharmonious chorus of what sounds to be wicked laughs. I fight the urge to shout back at the creatures. This feels like a nightmare I will never wake up from. I take another breath and resume my measured progress. Even after the first crossroad, I continue with the guide's simple direction, keeping west every chance I got. I have no other hints for this labyrinth. It's difficult to tell how much time has passed. It must be at least an hour, judging by how much energy I've expended. Since I've recomposed myself, I have not stopped walking for a second. Despite how much time has worn on, the route still feels like an endless abyss. Then I hear a noise which causes a shuddering chill to creep down my spine. An uneven clinking, followed by a squelching sound. It's a prowler. I immediately turn to look behind me. There's nothing. I breathe out, relieved. My ears search for the source of the noise, but with all the babble the Nixi are making, the direction is clouded. I strain my ears. That's it. The noise is drifting slowly from one of the connecting paths up ahead. I can faintly tell the noise is drawing near. The prowler has not arrived yet, but soon its path will intersect with my own. I will not wait for it to reveal itself, leaving me two options. I can run past the bridge connection to get ahead of it, or I can turn back and find a new path to take. Go past it! Go past it! I have faith that following the same path I've been is for the best. I steel myself and build up speed. I get closer and closer to the branch with the lurching ahead, and pick up my pace so I'm sprinting. I hear a gurgling noise as I pass through the crossroad. It must have been close enough to be pained by the light. I barely made it. However, I didn't hear any splash. It is still nearby. I look behind me to see if it has at least decided to come no further. Horrified, I realize it's pointedly following me. It is no longer mindlessly dragging itself through blackness. I have become its target. Its limbs bend wildly and unnaturally. It looks as though it's only barely keeping itself upright as its torso wobbles on its hips. That isn't stopping it from giving chase. I focus my view back ahead and continue to run. My breath rapidly becomes ragged. I can still hear the squishing footsteps of the prowler behind me as it lunges its body forward in that unnatural gait. Without warning, the bridge lurches to one side. What? What? Catching me completely off guard, I lose my footing and slam onto the damp surface of the bridge. My light falls with me, painfully snuffing out. Splashes and the excited stirring of many voices come from the lake. How? Why? Is it rotting? Or did they push the support beams? I'm left with no time to ponder the mystery as the monster draws near. I scramble back onto my feet as it closes in. Grabbing my dark lantern, I resume running to put some space between us. I open the latch on the lantern and pull out a match. I'll have to slow down at least briefly to properly light the flame without it blowing out. With death still on my heels, I must not let one precious moment be wasted. Set on my plan, and with everything in hand, I begin to decrease my pace. Light the lantern! Light the lantern! Moving as fast as I am capable, I place a lit match inside the lantern and the oil catches fire. As the flame grows, I can hear the awful footsteps behind me begin to peter out. I steal a glance behind me. It has truly stopped. The return of light seems to catch it off guard, and thankfully, it declines coming closer. Run! After a moment's reprieve to breathe, I rush forward once more. Fighting isn't an option, and I need to get away from that monster. I'm not able to run fast enough, however. I let out a loud scream as the prowler latches onto my body from behind. I'm thrown to the ground again. The shock is great, and the lantern slips from my hand, skidding across the bridge out of my reach. Because it came in contact with the light, the prowler drops itself back into the depths without attacking again. There is no time to feel relieved. Arms of other Nixi emerge from the water and reach up the side of the bridge, scraping the boards as they try to get to me. I try to climb up onto my feet, but one of the creatures takes hold of me before I can properly stand. I'm dragged back down to the ground, my jaw smacking hard against the bridge as the Nix blindly pulls me towards the edge. Other slimy, clawed hands grab onto me as I jam my nails hard into the crevice of the bridge. I kick frantically at the silhouettes, but they keep pulling me closer to the edge. I curl my fingers around the uneven wood tighter. Despite all my effort, there is no support. My bloody, splintered fingers come loose. Water engulfs my vision, heavy and cold, so thick I can't even hear my own thrashing. I try to grab my sword, try to fight back, but I can't even get it out of the hilt. The resistance against me is all-encompassing. Something grabs my arm, and then my wrist. I get pulled from side to side, or further down, first one way and then another. The water feels like a solid substance, and being dragged against it is like I'm being pressed through something. My vision grows darker and darker. I can't tell whether I'm going lower or whether I'm losing consciousness. My arms flail to bring me closer to whatever the surface is, but nothing is working. Complete darkness engulfs me. Was everything I've done worth it? I must believe that it was. Whoa! Man! What a harrowing journey, guys. That was crazy. And we died too! Woo! Alright. That was an interesting journey. And yeah, we didn't make it, but wow. You know, that was fun. I really enjoyed it. It was really cool making those decisions and seeing where it went. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of deaths that happen, but yeah, I kind of, as soon as we were left alone, I was like, we're not going to make it. We're not going to make it. But I guess maybe we should have stayed instead of run off. I don't know. Running seemed like the right option because it was coming closer and closer. Anyways, I don't know if anybody wants to see any more of this game, but if you do, again, I was thinking of maybe maybe going live with it, but also at the same time, I was thinking there wouldn't be any time to allow for chat to help me with choices to make unless I knew the choice was coming up and I made a save and then loaded at that point, because the options that matter go by too quickly. They go by really quickly. And then I was also thinking that if I did this live, I might have to take breaks because my voice, I did this whole run in one sitting. I'm not gonna, I didn't release it in one go, but I did the whole journey in one go, and it was fun, but my voice is starting to, like, you know, my mouth is starting to get dry and everything, and I got a coffee and water with me, but it only helps so much. But this was really fun. I would be glad and happy to go through another run if there is interest. If there is interest, please put a comment down below, like it, send me a message or something. Let me know, because I wouldn't mind doing another run. This was a great game, and for a free game, this was incredible. Very well done. And yeah, whether or not we go through another run through this game, or if we go into another game, I hope you've enjoyed. I hope that you'll come back for something else, or come back for this one yet again. And until then, everyone, bye.